Dear learners, I welcome you all to this video lecture. I am Dr. Kanchi Bajpai, an assistant professor, guest faculty here at Pandit Sundarlal Sharma, Open University, Chhattisgarh, Bilaspur. Before proceeding further, let's have a quick recap what we have learned already. I have covered topics like the course orientation of the history of English literature. Under this topic, I have covered several subtopics like the periods of the history of English literature and how to study literary history. I have also covered topics like the historical context of the age of Chaucer and the character of the knight written by Geoffrey Chaucer in his masterpiece work, The Canterbury Tales. Now, in today's lecture, I will be covering topics like the Renaissance, under the subtopics like the intellectual rebirth, humanism, curiosity, and exploration. Now, let's begin. Now, Renaissance, also known as an era of rebirth. Renaissance was an exploration of intellectual awakening, humanism, curiosity, and exploration. Welcome to one of history's most transformative eras. It was a pivotal bridge between the Middle Ages and modern world that fundamentally changed how humanity viewed itself, the cosmos, and the possibilities of human achievement. Now, the question comes here, what is the Renaissance? Here, I have given the definition as well as the timeline of the Renaissance era. The word Renaissance literally translates to rebirth in French. It's a French word. It describes a sweeping period of European cultural, artistic, political, and economic transformation, roughly spanning the 14th century to the 17th century. It was not a sudden event, but a gradual awakening, funded in large part by wealthy patrons such as the Medici family of Florence, Italy. It began in the city states of Italy, particularly Florence, before spreading northward and westward across the whole of Europe. Now, these all are the core pillars of the Renaissance era. These core pillars are four in number, and these are first, intellectual rebirth, second, humanism, third, curiosity, and fourth is the global exploration. Intellectual rebirth is the rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman knowledge to transform scholarship. Humanism is a placing of human potential and rational thought at the center of inquiry. Curiosity means embracing observation, experimentation, and the questioning of authority. Global exploration means exploration by setting sail into unknown place with the map of the world in the hand forever. Now, what was the condition of England during the Middle Ages, which was before the Renaissance era? Before the rebirth, what was the Middle Age? In order to understand the Renaissance, one must first understand what came before. The centuries preceding the Renaissance, often called the Middle Ages, were not entirely without achievement, but they were characterized by a very different set of priorities and intellectual contents. Both of the ages had their own achievements, but the achievements are different. What was the first type of achievement of the Middle Age? It was the focus on the afterlife and theology. Second, the knowledge was centralized and restricted. Third, they have a static and hierarchical worldview. You can pause the video to understand deeply and correctly what was the condition of the Middle Age before the rebirth. Now, first core theme that I have taken is the intellectual rebirth. What was the catalyst for the Renaissance era? The first catalyst was the fall of the Constantinople, which was happened in the year 1453. And how that happened? When the Ottoman Turks conquered Constantinople in 1453, many Greek-speaking Byzantine scholars fled westward, most notably to Italy, bringing with them precious classical manuscripts. This influx of ancient texts acted as intellectual dynamite, igniting fresh scholarly debate across the continent. Now the question comes here, what was rediscovered? Many things that was rediscovered at that time was the philosophical works of Plato and Aristotle, which was originally in Greek language. They were studied in their original Greek language at that time. The mathematical writings of Ulysses and Archimedes, the rhetorical works of Cicero and Virgil in classical Latin, ancient texts on geography, medicine, and natural philosophy. The lens was new, but the question was old. Scholars began re examining philosophy, mathematics, and early science through this classical framework, asking not just what things were, but why and how. This was a profound shift in the nature of human inquiry. Now, the another thing that was invented, and it was a spark in the Renaissance era, that was printing press. The printing press was invented in the year 1440 by Johannes Gutenberg, and it was a movable type of press. It was invented in a place named Mainz, which is in Germany. Before the invention of the printing press, books were copied by hand. It was very slow and an expensive process. It was a very expensive process that kept literacy and knowledge confined to wealthy elites and the clergy. The printing press was the internet of the 15th century. Now you yourself can compare why this era is known as the revolution of the internet or the artificial intelligence. At that time, printing press was compared to this same revolution. It allowed ideas to spread rapidly, widely, and cheaply. That's why it is known as the internet. Same thing internet does with us across national and linguistic borders, fundamentally demonstrating access to knowledge. Now, this following things happened because of the invention of the printing press. First, books were cheaper, spreading of ideas, breaking the church monopoly, and this and then last was literacy was rising. The cost of producing a book dropped dramatically, making text accessible far beyond the church. Wealthy nobility for first time in history. Second, ideas were spreading. Ideas like the Renaissance philosophy, scientific discoveries, human treatises, and classical texts could now be distributed across Europe within weeks rather than decades. Church's monopoly was breaking. The church could no longer fully control what ideas circulated in society. This directly enabled the Protestant Reformation and broader challenge to established authority. The literacy was rising because the books became affordable That's why literacy rates in Europe cities were rising, and a new educational reformation was happening in Europe in the Renaissance era. Now, the second core theme is the humanism. Now, what is humanism? Humanism is an intellectual movement of the Renaissance. It helps in the transformation virtually in the every field of human endeavor, from literature and art to politics and religion. Now, the question comes here, what was humanism? At its heart, humanism was an intellectual movement that placed human potential, rational thought, and earthly achievement at the center of inquiry rather than purely theological concerns. It did not necessarily reject religion. Rather, humanists believed that God gave humanity intelligence and creativity to be used to their fullest extent during life on earth. What was the motto of humanists? The motto was et fontes, which means back to the sources. This movement captured the movement's mission, returned to original Greek and Latin texts of antiquity, read them critically, and used those insights to improve human life and governance. It was a dramatic shift in focus. Why it was a dramatic shift in focus? Because humanism shifted the curriculum towards the study of humanities, which means a set of disciplines concerned with human culture and society. Now, what are those sets? These are grammar and rhetoric, history, poetry and literature, moral philosophy. Now, these are the names of the pioneers of humanism. First is the Petrarch, born in the year 1304 and died in the year 1374. He is also known as the father of humanism. Second is the Aramis, born in the year 1466 and died in the year 1536. He is also known as the prince of the humanist. Now, third is the Machiavelli, born in the year 1469 and died in the year 1527, also known as humanist realist. The full name of Petrarch is Francisco Petrarch. He is widely regarded as the first true humanist. What was his obsession now? His obsession with recovering and imitating the classical Latin of Cicero set the standard for Renaissance scholarship. That's why he is known as the father of humanism. He wrote passionate Italian poetry, most famously his Canzoniere. It, the poetry is a celebrated love, beauty, and individual emotion rather than purely religious themes. Petrarch was also the thinker to describe the preceding centuries as dark age compared to the glories of classical antiquity, establishing the very narrative of the Renaissance as rebirth. Second is Erasmus. Desiderius Erasmus was also the leading figure of Northern humanism, but he was not same like the Italian humanist who focused on political thought. He, his focus was on education, inner pity, and the reform of the church from within. He has written his satirical masterpiece in praise of folly, which shows the corruption in the church. By his careful translation of the Greek New Testament set new standards for biblical scholarship. He refused to join Martin Luther's Reformation but agreed that the church needed cleaning. Now, third is Machiavelli. The full name of Machiavelli is Niccolo Machiavelli. He is applied the humanist spirit of clear-eyed observation to the world of politics. His notorious treatise, The Prince, advised ruler to prioritize effectiveness over morality. And because of all these qualities, he is also known as a humanist realitist. Now, because these all possess certain qualities related to humanism, that's why they all are known as the pioneers of humanism. Now, in this slide, we will be covering humanism in art. Humanism also transformed into art. Now, we will see how humanism transformed art. First is realism and anatomical accuracy. Second is the linear perspective. And third is blending classical and Christian themes. Now you can also pause the video to have a clear understanding. Third is the curiosity and the Renaissance men. The Homo universale, which means the universal man. The Renaissance celebrated a new ideal of human achievement, that is the Homo universale or universal man. This was a person who refused to be confined to a single profession or discipline, someone who sought mastery across art, science, philosophy, music, engineering, and beyond. Being a Renaissance man meant observing the natural world carefully, questioning received wisdom, and seeking connection between seemingly unrelated fields. Leonardo da Vinci is a brilliant example, the ultimate example of the Renaissance man, because he was a painter, an anatomist, an engineer, a scientist, and an architect. Leonardo da Vinci, born in the year 1452 and died in the year 1519. He created his masterpiece work Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. That's why he was a brilliant painter. From filling thousands of pages with his precise anatomical drawings. That's why he is an anatomist. He has also designed flying machines, armored vehicles, and hydraulic systems. That's why he was an engineer. He has also studied optics, geology, botany, and hydrodynamics. That's why he was a scientist. Because of his brilliant architecture in the urban planning, which was ahead of his time. That's why he is also known as brilliant architect also. Now, what was the curiosity that led to the scientific revolution? First, observation over dogma. Second is the Galileo and his telescope. Third is the Copernicus and his discovery, the heliocentric universe. Now, many scientific methods were also emerged during the Renaissance. That's why Renaissance is also known as the period of the scientific revolution. Mapping of the human body was also done in the Renaissance period. by Andreas Vesalius. He is also known as the father of the modern anatomy. When Copernicus was looking the outward at the cosmos, Andreas Vesalius, born in the year 1514 and died in the year 1564, turned the same spirit of Renaissance curiosity inward towards the human body itself. He was a Flemish physician working in Italy at that time. He has a mastery on dissection of human cadavers, which was very helpful in understanding anatomy firsthand rather than relying on ancient medical texts. His landmark work was De Humani Corpus Fabrica, which means on the fabric of human body, which was published in the year 1543, was a revolutionary achievement in the Renaissance period. That's why he is also considered as the Renaissance greatest artist. Now, this age is also known as the age of exploration because many things were explored at that time. Why things were exploring? Because of the three motivation, that was a triple motivation, which was gold, God, and glory. The Renaissance era did not only turn humanity's gaze inward and upward, it turned it outward towards the vast, uncharted horizons of the world's ocean. It was an age of exploration beginning in the mid 15th century, was driven by potent combination of three forces. And these three forces are gold, God, glory. The economic engine. By the mid 15th century, the Ottoman Empire's control of key overland trade routes between Europe and Asia made the spice trade extraordinarily expensive. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg were luxury goods worth their weight in silver. Whoever found a direct sea route to Asia would gain an enormous economic advantage over their rivals. The economic pressure pushed the Atlantic facing kingdoms of Portugal and Spain to invest heavily in maritime exploration. And because of the investment in the marine explorations, following things are discovered. You can see the name of these following things by pausing the video. Now, this is the list of the tools of exploration. First is the caravel, second is the magnetic compass, third is the astrobel, and fourth is the improved cartography. I have mentioned here how these tools were very helpful in exploration. Now, this is a list of the key figures of the exploration. First was Vasco da Gama, born in Portugal in the year 1460 and died in the year 1524. He was the first European to reach India by sea. He has achieved what a generation of Portuguese explorers had been working towards. And he became the foundation of the Portuguese maritime empire. His exploration is a key exploration in the age of Renaissance. Now, the second figure is Christopher Columbus, born in Spain in the year 1451 and died in the year 1506. His exploration made a permanent contact between the Old World and the Americans. In 1492, third is the Ferdinand Magellan, born in Spain in the year 1480 and died in the year 1521. He had circumnavigated the entire globe with 270 men in 5 ships from Spain in the year 1519. It was his victory. Now, this is the list of the Columbian exchange. What traveled each way? New Europe to Africa, potatoes, tomatoes, maize, also known as corn, chocolate, vanilla, tobacco, chili peppers, rubber. New to the Americans, horses, wheat, barley, rice, cattle, pigs, ships, coffee, smallpox, measles, influenza. Because of their exploration, these following things were exchanged with them. Now, in this slide, I have mentioned the intersection of the 4 themes, and these themes are intellectual rebirth, humanism, curiosity, and exploration. I have mentioned that why this all these 4 themes are interconnected with each other. Now, exploration has its darker side also. Why? Because if it gave birth to the colonialism. Second, slavery was promoted because of the exploration. Third, the dissemination of the indigenous population. These all 3 things are the darker side of the exploration. Now, there was a decline in the Renaissance era. In this slide, I have mentioned why there was a decline in the Renaissance because of the following things. First, changing trade routes and Italian decline. Second, the Protestant Reformation, which was happened in the year 1517. And third, the Counter Reformation and censorship. Because of all these things, there was a decline in the Renaissance. These all 4 things are the legacies of the Renaissance. First, the modern mindset. Second, the scientific method. Third is the globalized world. And fourth, the arts and liberal education. In conclusion, I have to say that Renaissance was a revolution of the human mind. The Renaissance was a revolution that unfolded across 2 centuries, reshaping every dimension of European civilization. Fueled by the rediscovery of ancient wisdom, the humanist faith in human potential, the Renaissance spirit of curiosity and daring voyages of exploration that remapped the globe, it transformed the medieval world into the foundation of the modern one. In my final thought, I have to say that Renaissance reminds us of something profoundly important. And what is that important thing? It is the curiosity of human and the fearless pursuit of knowledge. In my next slide, I will be covering the literature of the Renaissance period under the following topics like university wits, sonnets, and Elizabethan theatre. That's all for today's video. I hope to see you all soon with my next video. Thank you all for joining me today.